It is 5:40 and the meeting is now called to order.
Good evening. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 1046 et sec, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising in the Star Ledger, El Nuevo Coquí, Haiti Progress, and Luz Americana newspapers, and by distributing to the administrative offices of the Newark Public Schools. A copy of the meeting notice was also forwarded to City Hall for posting. This is a board business meeting for Tuesday night, December 8, 2015.
Please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Ms. Baskerville-Richardson. Here. Ms. Carter.
Here.
She's here. She's by teleconference. Ms. Von Secker.
Here.
Mr. Hassan. Mr. Jackson.
Present.
Mr. Lewis.
Present.
Mr. Rashidi. Here. Mr. Salinger. Chair Perrella.
Here.
The quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for coming to our business meeting tonight. We are going to start off with committee reports, and our first person will be Ms. Baskerville-Richardson for program and instruction.
Good evening, everyone. Program and Instruction Committee took place on December 1st, 2015. The meeting was called to order at 5:39 p.m. Present were myself, Antoinette Baskerville-Richardson, Donald Jackson, Dr. Perkins, NPS staff Travis Reed, Maria Orozco, Marixa Castillo, Karen Harris, Executive Director of Early Childhood, Okasa Ahmad. Please excuse me if I didn't pronounce it right. I will get it. Other attendees, Barry Erickson, Assistant Commissioner and Chief Performance Officer from the New Jersey Department of Education. So as usual, the Program and Instruction Committee agenda was packed full, so I am, in the interest of time, I will summarize, and I've been advised that the minutes will be on the website, so anyone is free to examine those and to contact myself via email, and any questions, we will certainly answer them for you. So first of all, excuse me, the Program and Instruction Committee minutes from November were reviewed and approved. Our next item was resolutions regarding field trips and the HIB report and resolution. Basically, with the HIB report and resolution, the district responded to NJDOE's request to add schools to the registered list for HIB reporting. Other major topics, we had a major rollout about the park data from Dr. Erickson and Dr. Perkins, and I'm going to, again, just kind of summarize that, and both of the individuals are here in case folks have any questions afterward. So Dr. Erickson led a detailed discussion which included the difference between park test items and previous tests, that with the park test we can release the actual questions, that the old test was basically just marking black boxes, and that way the tests were reused with Park. It's a very different situation. In addition, we are able to, teachers are able to utilize actual test questions, and students exemplars are also available, so that there are excellent samples of real student work that can be used as an instructional tool, and teachers are better able to determine how they are determining the level of student, whether they're determining the level of student achievement accurately. so that also schools can sort the data by what they did well, what they did not do well. So they are able to identify where students are weak in a particular skill. For example, if fractions are weak in grade 5, they're not only able to identify that, but to map it map the student data back to where students began to either fall short or to gain. Obviously, we know that the PARC has replaced our old assessments. With PARC, there are 5 performance levels as opposed to 4 performance levels for NJ Ask and HESPA. The state scores were done in October. The district, NPS, will share the district data on December 15th, so that data will be shared next week at our regular meeting. Mr. Jackson will ask questions about who was actually grading the essays. Basically, there were 14,000 scorers in New Jersey. You had to have a college degree in the area that you are grading to actually be approved as a scorer. 75% were classroom teachers. Mr. Jackson also asked another question about whether grammar and punctuation were included in the scoring, and the answer is that there's a separate rubric for reading and writing, and for reading there is a rubric for student expression and knowledge of conventions being grammar and the mechanics of the English language. So again, with the PARC, parents will be able to get a lot more information on the specifics of how their students are doing, how their child is doing, and how and why and where their child scored the way that they did. There's also a video to help principals explain the score reports with parents, and the district is trying to empower parents on a more level playing field when they talk to the teachers about how their students are doing. So, I'm sorry, there's just so much information, and I am going to have to skip over a lot of it in the interest of time. So, one of the most important thing, well, 2 important things. First of all is, and we talk a lot, about the teacher training and how program and instruction and professional training will help the teachers to basically be able to break down the students' reading behaviors and have more tools for understanding better what the students need. One thing is that's important for next week when the scores come out, become public, is that it's very important that people understand that you can't compare PARC to previous tests because it's just it's very different. It's like comparing, I don't even want to say apples to oranges, but you can't compare. We're basically starting at ground zero with the testing, and as the years go on, we'll be able to make comparisons. So another issue we discussed about the PARC test is that everything is geared towards preparing students for college. Seems to be, at least, in our conversation, not everyone plans on going to college, so how do we explain the relevance of these tests? How do we get parents and students to buy in who aren't interested in going to college? Why is it important to them? And basically, the response is that in development of the PARC, it also deals with workforce skills that are needed, not just for college, but the demands for any type of accredited or certificated program that a child or a young adult might be interested in. So, moving to the next subject, the updated DIP. Basically, the New Jersey Department of Education has added some rigor to our DIP, and that rigor builds specific tasks and accountability into the implementation. And I did receive a copy of the updated DIP from Dr. Perkins, and I don't believe it was a marked up copy, but
that is true. I did not mark that up, so I could go back and show the track changes if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful, to rather than having to compare the 2 documents. Thank you. Our next major topic was pre-K 5-year plan. A lot of this was shared with the Finance Committee, but in talking about our preschool, just to pick out a few key points, basically we're at 95% capacity. The district is trying to basically plan now for enrollment so that we can have as many young people as possible enrolled in preschool. All providers will use Salesforce, which is basically a registration program for a preschool, but there will not be a central matching process as there is with the universal enrollment. Also, we talked about how the district is trying to let families know more about their pre-K options via a texting campaign and other ways of messaging to parents. Okay. Okay, we talked about whether particular sites were up to code. We talked about some of the sites where we now have preschool students where the facility that they are using is not necessarily up to the mandates for preschool, such as not having restrooms in each classroom. And we talked about the various possibilities for the district to try to resolve that. Okay. So, and again, just a lot more conversation about how to train teachers about what a good preschool, what's going on, what a good preschool classroom looks like, what's going on in that classroom, and how we not only how we develop expectations and how we engage families and try to get better results with our preschool students. So another issue discussed was the fact that the preschool providers in the private sites are leaving many times because of funding cuts and the fact that they don't make the same salaries as those preschool teachers who are actually employed by the district, and their efforts to try to get monies to put them to give them more incentive to stay. Next topic was updated policies, dyslexia screening, and basically, talked about that how the state defines dyslexia and basically the law that says that that focuses on grade 2, that we need to identify students by early in grade 2, and if we do that, then that will allow us to hit all of the mandated markers. Okay. We talked about, there's also a resolution regarding sports-related concussion and head injuries, and intramural and interscholastic competition. For additional topics, we talked about the update on Marin. At the last regular board meeting, Ms. Jackson reported on some issues taking place at Marin. Assistant Superintendent Center followed up with Ms. Jackson to find out if there are specific cases he can investigate. And okay, in terms of communicating the graduation requirements for this year, Dr. Perkins is working with our new lead for the Office of Family and Community Engagement, Mrs. Margarita Muniz, to develop a plan for getting information to the parents on the new graduation requirements and the appeals process, and so that we're not up close to graduation and folks not understanding what they should have done. Okay, and basically we will have an update about that in January. I just want to say this is not in my report, but I have full confidence that this is going to be done in a really expedited and really way to really inform parents, because I know of Ms. Muniz and the work that she's done in the past, so I have full confidence in that. We also talked about citywide school fair, recruitment fair for our schools for this year, and Dr. Perkins is going to find out if that is going to truly be a citywide school fair as we've had in the past, where all schools in the city came and basically pitched their schools. And we talked about the importance of a media campaign to promote our district schools, as we are every day competing with more well-funded campaigns in terms of commercials and mailings to our homes and those kinds of things. And also, we discussed the need to roll discussion about the new community schools initiative into our larger conversations regarding program and instruction. What does that mean with respect to the feeder schools, and basically request that the superintendent address that initiative at the business and the regular meetings so that we can have regular updates on that. On the 14th of December, the Program and Instruction Committee will be having a special meeting, and that's because our agenda, as you can see, is so extensive. We will be talking about Amistad implementation, review of social study texts and curricular materials, and science curricular updates. The meeting adjourned at 7:57. Thank you for indulging me with this long report, and I hope it has been informative.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baskerville-Richardson. Even though your reports are long, they're very informative, and it's something that we as a board, because we're not part of your committee, we need. But now the floor is now open for discussion. Any members have questions for Ms. Baskerville-Richardson? Nobody? Okay, is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
Mr. Jackson?
Second by who?
Mr. Lewis, motion to accept the Program Instruction Committee report as delivered by Ms. Baskerville-Richardson, moved by Mr. Jackson, second by Mr. Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Report accepted.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ms. Tashay Carter. She is not presently here with us because some of you may or may not know she went some surgery, and we all know that Tashay, when she was running, she had the desire and a level of commitment to the board, and indeed, she has been, very, even though she just got operated, she has been running her meetings, via phone. So, Ms. Carter, I want to thank you and acknowledge all the work that you are doing. So next we have your committee report.
Thank you. The Personnel Committee, we had a conference call on December 3rd. The call started at 5:15. On our agenda, we talked about the vacancy and separation report. So currently, there are 57 total vacancies, 24 in the high school and 33 in the elementary schools. We had a total of 41 separations, 6 were a discharge due to criminal history, 2 were due to deaths, and 22 were retirements, and 11 were either resignations or relocations. The talent in collaboration with the network team has conducted an audit of the school vacancies to ensure that these are accurate numbers. A question I was asked: what are some of the reasons given by principals for the changes in their vacancies and positions needed? And it was the answer given to us by the office was the budgeting process happens in the spring, and then comes to fall, there may be a different number of enrollment. So therefore, vacancies still may be in existence because the enrollment isn't to the level of which they need another teacher. We also spoke about the teacher and principal selection process. The talent walked us through the slides, which include the steps for principal candidate selection as well as the teacher. Some of the questions asked were, how long does the process take? Which the answer given was that it's a 6 to 8 week total process. There's some phone screening that happens, and then the teacher or principal needs to be selected to match if they are matched to that particular school. We asked how many candidates are in the application pool today. The talent office has assured us that they will get us an answer to that question. The talent office is still working with schools and trying to fill the hard-to-staff areas. They're working with universities for the students who are graduating this coming December. to see if they can onboard them. A question was asked about what is the process for hiring a Science Park principal. Talent said that they have met with leaders at the school to discuss this role, the nomination and selection process for a new principal. This included some parents, teachers, and other current staff at the school site. They said they've also posted the position and has it advertised on different websites. Talent also informed us that there's a new principal for American History High School. His name is Brian, excuse me if I mess up the last name, Olakowski. And he was the principal at Wyndham Middle School, which was designated a turnaround school in Connecticut. A little bio they gave us goes as follows. In this role, he increased student achievement as measured on the CNC and NWEA each year. He also oversaw and implemented the first advisory program for the school and adopted Turning Point as their advisory program. Prior to taking on this role, he was a vice principal in the middle school in Stamford, Connecticut, and before that, he served as a high school social studies teacher. Brian is passionate about school climate and culture and has proven results in raising achievement in schools within which he has worked. His mother was also an LDTC for the North Public Schools, and he cites her experience here as being one of his critical factors in bringing him back to North to want to work with our young people. Brian was unanimously selected by the NPS selection committee and the school-based committee comprised of alum, parents, school leaders, and teachers at American History High. So he'll be starting in January, to my understanding. We talked about a resolution that may be coming before us about peer validation. And this is a component in a teacher contract that allows a third party to observe a teacher for the purpose of providing independent review of the teacher's practice. This process will begin in January 2016. Many teachers have provided feedback, but they appreciate the opportunity to receive feedback from an outside source. And there were two policy updates, which is supervision, which is Board Policy 4115. This policy is being updated to align with the current state law. The two changes happening would be there's a change and adding a reference to the Common Core standards, and the second is an update to professional development requirements. Previously, they were required to have 100 hours of PD over 5 years, and now it is changed to making sure they have 20 hours of PD per year. And the second policy update was the health policy update, which is Board Policy 5141.21. And this policy is also being updated to align with the state law and regulations. It's about the administering of medications in schools. And our meeting adjourned at 6 p.m. And those who attended were myself, Khalil Rashidi, Phil Sellinger, Larissa, Andrea, Kim, and Vanessa. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carter. The floor is now open for discussions and questions.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Lewis.
I have two questions. First of all, for the 56 vacancies, do we know how many of them are instructional and how many are non-instructional?
Out of the 57 vacancies?
Yes.
I don't know how many in front of me are instructional versus non-instructional. I don't know if someone from the staff there can answer.
Ms. Rodriguez is currently not here.
We will get that to you. I'm sure the overwhelming majority are instructional.
My other question is about we heard about the new hire for principal. I remember the governor put in place a residential law that you have to live in the state of New Jersey in order to work in the state of New Jersey. Are people that we're hiring getting waivers to work for the district?
So the state law, as I recall it, is that you have a year from taking a job in the state to establish your residency, and if you're not able to do that, you are entitled to apply to an independent board for a waiver. So in this case, I'm sure that issue has not yet been confronted.
Have we gave waivers in the past for employees here in the district?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I don't know.
Could I speak to the candidate? So the new principal at American Industry, Mr. Olkowski, has moved. He lives in New Jersey. He used to work in Connecticut. Just he came home to take care of his ailing parents. That happened many months ago. He had already relocated back to New Jersey and is a New Jersey resident right now.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jackson?
I'm gonna try the mic one more time. If not, then I can test 1, 2. But I have a couple of questions. My first question would be, I raised the issue at this year.
Excuse me, Mr. Jackson, I'm sorry, your mic isn't on.
Is it working now? Yeah, it's working. I can't hear myself. All right, anyway, not a problem. A couple of months ago, I raised the issue from this seat in regards to a study to be conducted by our personnel/talent office in terms of an impact that happened when we abolished, that took a minute, I apologize, abolished the position of department chairs. The reason being is because, case in point, I'm looking at a flyer here from a high school, and I got listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vice principals. So understanding that these titles, department chair, vice principal, principal, they're coded as such because by law, and those who are well versed in the law, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's a certain student population that has to coincide with the classification of these titles. For department chairs of a certain discipline like English language arts, mathematics, science, whatever have you, that would be, their respected departments. So with having 8 vice principals, what impact is that having on a school's budget? Essentially, if we're under-enrolled in the schools and we have 8 vice principals in one school with a principal, what is that doing to our budget?
Brad?
So two points of clarification. First point is historically we'd want to look at, again, for any particular school, if the question was kind of how does it compare to prior numbers of DCs compared to prior numbers of vice principals, we'd want to look back and make that comparison. I can say with confidence in the vast majority of situations, the overall number of high school administrators has gone down from the time that we eliminated the DC position to now. That may not be true in every single school, but across the board that number did go down. In terms of the number of vice principals at any given school, that is a number determined every spring in the budgeting process, where a school assesses, again, its supervisory needs and looks at its current staffing and often makes adjustments. Again, over the past couple of years, those numbers have gone down as a pattern or trend, but not necessarily at every school. Lastly, the impact, it wasn't a big salary difference between the DC job and the guidance counselor job. So, for example, 4 DCs and 4 vice principals would cost roughly the same as 8 vice principals. It wasn't dramatically different. There was a small step difference, but not a dramatic difference. So that's a quick overview kind of how it works. Again, I'd be happy to talk about a specific case here or either offline.
So, just for my understanding, if there wasn't a big impact at all in terms of salaries, because I know the salaries are different, and just to go off of my knowledge that I have, 8 vice principals seem very excessive. Now, again, correct me, vice principal department chairs, wouldn't their job functions be a little bit different? And with the abolishment of department chairs now being classified as a vice principal, would you have absorbed those responsibilities? So say, for instance, math department chair science at Malcolm X Shabazz High School, math department. Now that title no longer exists. So you're now going to be hired as a vice principal, but you're going to still function as a department chair. I have to pay you more money because that position requires more money, and I'm doing that for 8 different people.
So I'm going to address this generically, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of my philosophy on this, which is that if you talk to 10 principals, 10 out of 10 of them will tell you that they are in the best positions as the commander-in-chief of their building to achieve their academic and student goals, and that if in their judgment the right outcome is to have multiple, with the budget they have, to have multiple vice principals and give them duties accordingly, or to have department chairs, my own view is that we should, for the most part, defer to that to that judgment, while at the same time making clear what our expectations are for student achievement and other outcome-based measures. So I'm sure that Mr. Haggerty would agree with me that this number of vice principals at this particular high school is actually not typical of high schools across or schools across the district, but this particular principal has chosen to use the limited resources assigned to it and to allocate them in this way. And generally speaking, my philosophy, and I would encourage others to consider this, is to defer to the individual who's in charge of the building.
Okay, so how about this? Because I requested it and I followed up with the procedure that was set forth, and as I was advised to, and I followed my end of the bargain, but I didn't get any type of response. Can the district in any way possible give us, this board, or if the board doesn't want it, give myself some type of report as to the difference between a department chair and a vice principal, their exact day-to-day functions, how are they assisting in the operation of the day-to-day operations of the building. I do understand, the role, but the method to my madness is 8 vice principals. And this isn't just the only school. Let me just be mindful that this isn't the only school here on this flyer. I know for a fact Malcolm X Shabazz High School has more than 5 vice principals. And that wasn't the case when I was going there. But other things existed. And the population was well more than what it is now. So for a school building or for a district who has declining enrollment as of September, has declining enrollment, we're underfunded. Why are we paying for 8 vice principals in one school, 7 vice principals in another school, or whatever have you?
So just one point of clarification, our enrollment is actually district-wide, actually up year on year. So if it's your counsel that we take a look at the vice principal function, we're more than happy to do that as we proceed down the road.
And Mr. Superintendent, if I could add, what I'm hearing from Member Jackson's question is a concern over the number of administrators versus the number of students.
Yes.
And what I can say with confidence over the past 4 years is as the enrollment, particularly in this case in the high schools, has declined slightly, the number of administrators, specifically that combination of principals, vice principals, and department chairs, 4 years ago compared to today is certainly lower than it was before as a result of that declining enrollment. We can get you more specific information on that with the help of the talent office, but that I can say for sure.
Wonderful. And then I'll also follow up with this, and maybe legal can help me with this. What does the state of New Jersey say the ratio should be between administrator and student population? And what, average-wise, what does the district look like between student population and administrator? If I'm
So
making sense.
can I just get a clarification? By administrator, you're talking about school-based administrators like principals, vice principals.
Understanding the school needs a principal, but you have support administrators like vice principal and.
I need to check this, but I actually think those data are maintained on a statewide basis to enable comparison. So we will see how Newark stacks up compared to other districts.
Can I help?
Yeah, yes, please.
Good evening, board members, Chair Perillo. Mr. Jackson, the statute, as far as I recall, is silent, but I will defer to General Counsel if she can find anything. Where it is highlighted in information that can be used for all districts is on the state DOE website in a report called Taxpayer's Guide to Educational Spending, and there are some 16 indicators on there, and there is one specifically with regards to administration to pupil ratio and support staff to pupil ratio, realizing that that report is always a year behind.
Thank you. And also, I think it's something wrong with my mic, but yeah, something is wrong with my mic, but it's all right. I got a loud mouth. It's all right. And thank you for my questions. But if we can work on this issue, see, now it's getting a little louder. If we can work on this, if we can indulge in further conversations outside of this arena, it would be greatly appreciated because I really need to understand what's going on in our district.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Is there a motion to accept Ms. Card's report?
Move it.
I have Mr. Lewis moving and Ms. Fonseca on the second. This is a motion to accept Ms. Carter's Personnel Committee report of December 3rd, 15, moved by Mr. Lewis, second by Ms. Fonseca. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Report accepted.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Jackson, Operations Committee.
But no. Good evening, everyone. Stand by, give me 1 second. Okay. Good evening. Operations Committee meeting started at 5:51 in the afternoon. Members present were myself, Donald Jackson, board member.
What was the date of the meeting, Mr. Jackson?
Oh, excuse me. That would have been, I believe that would have been the 2nd of this month, on Wednesday. I apologize. Members present with myself, Donald Jackson, Vice Chair, Ms. Marquisa Quill-Lewis, Director of Security, Mr. Eric Ingold, Director of Facilities, Mr. Keith Barton, and Mr. Travis Reed, our go-to guy for the board. Unfortunately, I was a little late due to unforeseen circumstances, so I will begin with where I started off. At Hawthorne Avenue School, there were an issue with drainage from the TCUs. Those would be the mobile trailers that sit in the back because Avon was supposed to have an addition, but we're not going to get into that conversation. The problem was that there wasn't vandalism issues. However, people or unknown persons would come onto the school property and steal the pipes and take them to the scrapyard and do what they needed to do. Unfortunately, that caused an issue where water would infiltrate into the TCUs and cause a lot of issues. There will be new PVC drainage system on the TCUs to prevent people from stealing them. Basically, the PVCs are plastic, and they don't hold as much value or wouldn't pose a threat in an assessment. It wouldn't pose a threat as to being stolen off, and this should alleviate the drainage issues that are going on at the TCUs. The second floor corridor has started to be painted. Weekway bathroom fixtures and lights were fixed. Replaced soap dispensers in the men's restroom. A toilet clog was fixed in the men's room as well, and leaking toilets were also fixed. We also have 3 agenda items to vote on for purchasing, and this would be for fire suppression and renewal contract for boiler tube repairs and replacement, and a renewal contract for general construction for alteration, for flooring and tile. This is also for gym floors After reviewing the resolutions, we saw no problem with the vote. We talked about boiler repair for a slight moment. Mr. Keith Barton explained to us what the inside of your average boiler will look like in the school. Basically, imagine I wish I could draw it, but I can't. Imagine a cylinder tube, and it has rods going in. These rods will have to be checked for cracks. How that's done is water is placed in the boiler, and if there's a crack, that tube has to be taken out. If it can be fixed, it will be fixed on the spot. If not, it would have to be replaced. Most of our boilers in the district are well over 50, 60 years old. With that being said, we know that with age, things are tender. So, of course, we have a lot of repairs in the district. Just a overview on the repairs that were done by the vendor for gym floors. There was an issue at University High School with a leaky roof, which caused the gym floor to buckle. The repair to the roof was made, and the contractor replaced the gym floor. The district does not have the manpower or the materials to fix the issues in the district. With that being said, we do have a very talented and well-oriented operations department with well-skilled workers. Unfortunately, again, with manpower and materials, they simply can't do the work. We also needed a contract for asbestos issues and environmental issues, other materials that needed to be removed for gym repairs. Again, most of our buildings are very old, and these were the materials used to build the buildings. A issue was raised to myself at a previous meeting in terms of an electrical issue at Shabazz Field. Again, as reported at the last business meeting, the lighting underneath the bleachers were behind the scoreboard were completed. The fenced area was cleaned of weeds and brush and all other dirty materials. There was also the turf was replaced as well. The dusk and dawn lights were repaired as well. And the issue was raised about the field lights, which are the real big floodlights, I call them, that rise above the stadium. There was a report that there were issues with those. I asked facilities director, were there any issues? To his knowledge, he was not aware of any. And the next day, Mr. Barton was to visit the school and view the field lights and other lights to check for electrical issues. And if there were any issues, we will receive a report. Maple Avenue School, there was also a report that the school is going to be used for an academy or some type of program coming up in the very near future. Again, these reports were not substantiated. However, they were rumors, and unfortunately nowadays rumors seem to be true. So I asked, were there any plans for Maple Avenue School as per the operate facilities? At this point, it is still under discussion. We would have to get more information from the superintendent's office. Hopefully we can get an elaborated report if the school is going to be used and used for what or whatever have you. Oliver Street School, I rose that issue. I remember also having conversations with parents and others at a board meeting, and also having some reports about Oliver Street School. So I rose the issue, if we are to place another academy or place a school into Oliver Street School, there were some talks about early childhood going into Oliver Street School. I wanted to make sure that we discussed it in operations to make sure that the building was safe and deemed safe for continued usage. Me personally, if there are significant physical issues with the school building, we shouldn't be using it to put people in harm's way. I was assured that there were some issues, but not severe for it not to be occupied. We will also follow up further on Oliver Street School and report back. And that concludes my report. The meeting was adjourned at 6:31.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. The floor is now open for discussion.
Madam Chair. Mr. Jackson, was there any talk about what the plan is for the trailers at Hawthorne? I know they're supposed to be temporary, but are they really permanent?
So, Board Member Rashidi, thank you. We've had some talk around this for quite some time because, as we know, those trailers have been there for quite some time. We will have to review that back in our facilities committee. I believe also this is going to be another issue that we might have to bring to our state legislatures on the state level. I'm not too familiar with the history of Hawthorne, but I do remember hearing a very long time ago that the building that was at Hawthorne, its extension had burned down some time ago, and the TCUs were temporary for usage. As we see that this temporary is now seemed to be permanent, it is not just we're talking with some in the community. It's not. It's not serving its purpose in terms of, serving as a house for the students, because there are some issues, some significant issues, and again, with something like TCU's, the trailers, they don't seem to serve as a permanent fixture. Just with water infiltration alone, it's not like a water infiltration at actual Hawthorne Avenue School. It can't be, fixed and sustained, in my opinion, of course, and deemed suitable for usage. It seems like it's a quick fix. The district is doing what it can with the resources given, which are bare minimum. And I don't want to sound like I'm on a soapbox or anything, but I think it is definitely a issue. But I hear your point. I am going to bring this up in operations, and I think this would take a further effort for us as a board and the community, and the constituent and the families of Hawthorne to find a permanent fixture, because not only are the TCUs have issues, but the building also has its issues as well.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to accept Mr. Jackson's report?
Is there a second? Mr. Rashidi. It's the motion to approve the Operations Committee report from December 2nd, 2015, delivered by Mr. Jackson, was moved by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Rashidi. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Report approved.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Finance Committee. I just wanted to make note that the person that chaired the committee was Ms. Fonseca, just because Mr. Lewis was putting smiles on children's faces, serving as Santa Claus. So the person who is going to
Now, why you gotta give that up? It wasn't Santa Claus?
Unfortunately not. That is why we have Ms. Fonseca.
Good evening, everyone. We had our meeting yesterday, and we began at 6:06 p.m. Present was Ms. Ariana, Ms. Richardson. Mr. Lewis came in via phone at some point in between being Santa Claus. Myself, Ms. Wilson, and 3 other members of the staff. We discussed the items on the agenda. Some of them Mr. Jackson touched on. As far as the fire suppression sprinkler system, the renewal of the contract of the boiler tubes, we found all that to be fine. 2 items that we discussed that he didn't mention, not part of his report, was Ms. Brenda Riley is donating weight equipment to Eastside High School. She's donating a few items, so we definitely want to accept that because it's great. It'll be for the students to use, and I think that's awesome that someone wants to donate that type of equipment. Another item we discussed was Future Ready New Jersey resolution, and that's where we give approval. Well, we recommend and give approval to the districts, a permission to apply for a grant that would allow for more professional development and children's development with assistance to navigate not only the park system, but beyond the park test, but also just to be more prepared for digital learning. As we know, we're entering into a new stage as far as our education goes, and kids need to be prepared. We had a lot of concerns with some kids having issues when they were taking the park exam because they didn't know how to navigate the system. We had heard some concerns from some parents and students, and apparently the state is also aware of that, and they decided to put a grant together that would allow for someone to come in and actually provide more professional development for the children and the students to help them not only navigate for the test, but to be prepared for digital learning. So it'll be beneficial for us because I'm more concerned about the children being able to navigate the system. So we spoke about that, and that's on the agenda. The next item that we discussed was 12.2, and that's web-based special education software support. And this is a consultant for the state, but this brings in money to the district. From Ms. Wilson was going to send us some additional information, but basically what this does is that it helps with our IEPs for the students on the, basically like the reporting, I believe, Ms. Wilson, right? The reporting of it. So bringing this in, it helps us because we hear a lot of complaints about the IEPs not being up to date. I know we keep hearing them meeting after meeting, and this is supposed to help with that. So this is also an agenda item we discussed. And we discussed the Early Childhood Center playground at Chancellor Avenue that will commence. And from that, Ms. Richardson, well, while we were talking about the Early Childhood Center playground, Ms. Richardson also was concerned about all the early childhood schools and which ones have bathrooms in the classrooms and which ones don't. So she posed that question, and she wanted to know by school which ones have it, which ones don't. So we're supposed to get that report. And the last thing we discussed was part of the DIP, and what we had approved recently, I forgot when we approved it, a few months ago. What we approved was reviewed by the state. They had some additional recommendations, nothing major. They were okay with what we're planning to move forward with, but they wanted additional information to be added. So for example, we recommended that all of our files be kept electronically, so they wanted it to be specified, how are we doing that? How are we maintaining it electronically? Like, all of that should be specified. And in taking those recommendations, we can expedite the process of this whole QSAC. Correct, Ms. Wilson? Okay. And that's about it. Our meeting was short. We ended at 6:59 p.m. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Fonseca. The floor is now for discussion. No? Is there a motion to accept?
Move it.
Mr. Lewis, or second? Second by Mr. Sheets. Motion to approve Ms. Fonseca's report on the December 7th Finance Committee meeting. Moved by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Sheedy. All in favor? Any opposed or abstained? Motion is carries. Report is approved.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the review agenda for the public meeting. Please note that the next meeting will be December 15th at Barringer High School, which is located at 90 Parker Street. Is there a motion to accept?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
board resolutions, what resolutions do that include? We have board resolutions for next week?
Are there any board resolutions, or is that just a placeholder?
No, we are going to have a resolution for a teacher who's retiring.
And then also last month I asked for us to have a resolution for Reverend Ron Christian family as well.
Yes, to add it. We are going to add it.
So those are two items added to the board resolution section.
Yes. Anything else? No? Is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
I have Ms. Fonseca moving it. Second, Mr. Lewis. It's a motion to accept the December 15th, 2015 agenda for next Tuesday, moved by Ms. Fonseca, second by Mr. Lewis. All board members in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries, and the agenda is accepted for next week.
Thank you very much. Next, we have our superintendent report.
Good evening, board members, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and welcome members of the community who are here. We are going to cover just a few items quickly, all of which will be covered at greater depth when we get to next week at the traditional board meeting. So we're going to go, in some cases, over rather quickly and rather lightly, with the exception of a fuller update about the park as we get ready for the release and analysis of those results.
Pardon me, Mr. Superintendent, please excuse me. I mean, absolutely no disrespect, but we're not going to go in depth tonight because...
No, well, we're happy to go in depth tonight. We have several, by the way, it's your meeting, it's your preference. We are literally have much of the same material to cover tonight as well as this coming week, and we're happy to spend as much time as you'd like. So the items we're going to cover is we're going to hear, as was anticipated in the committee reports, about our early childhood work, a very quick update on the strategic plan, as well as an update on where we are in the release of the park scores. So we're going to begin with a presentation by our head of early childhood, one of our very talented executives. So if we can turn the microphone over to Nana Ofosu-Ama, who leads this work, and we're grateful to hear your report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, board members and Chairperson Perillo, and ladies and gentlemen here. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of the work that we've been talking about and want to do for the following year. So as a piece of, if you look up on the slides, and I'm not going to read through all of it per se, but I wanted to kind of share how the team kind of looks at our work. And when you look behind you, sorry for those who have to look behind you, if you see the staircase there, it's kind of a staircase that starts with pre-K and goes all the way to college, and it could take different paths. We share this a lot with everything that we do because we want to share, we know that what we do in pre-K sets the foundation for our children and families. And so we take this work very seriously in that what we really want to do is make sure our children and our families are ready to be able to support our children's learning from pre-K on. So we do know that what we do in pre-K is extremely important. We also know that based on the new, or a study done through 2 years ago by the National Institute for Early Education Research, the effects that Abbott districts have had on where children come to 2 years of pre-K really is significant as they go into 4th and 5th grade. And when you look at the ELA, math, and science scores, there is a significant impact. And so we really look at how to continue to strengthen what pre-K has done in Newark over time. Okay. So today you can find pre-K in various settings. We do have pre-K in the elementary schools. We have pre-K in early childhood schools, as has been mentioned tonight. We also have pre-K, and actually most of our children are in contracted community-based provider pre-Ks, preschool programs, and we do have a few charter schools that also have pre-K as well. Currently, my team is overseeing the elementary schools, early childhood schools, and the contracted providers. The state works directly with the charter schools as well. Our two key areas that we are focused on as a team are around maximizing enrollment in pre-K, and so continuing to build capacity, but also really looking at how we support participation for our children and families. There's some information that we're starting to see that we want to do more for this as well. The second priority going into next year, and again, some of this would be pulled up as quickly as we can if we can, is looking at how to continue to provide the high quality pre-K programming. I think that Newark has been an example across the nation, and the New Jersey model is one that's set up for high quality pre-K programming. We want to make sure we're continuing to strengthen that in all areas so that we can have positive outcomes for our children as they leave pre-K into kindergarten and beyond as well. So next one on the first priority that I mentioned, increasing pre-K enrollment and participation. So the first piece that we want to do is increase pre-K capacity. So as we go into 16-17, we are adding more pre-K seats, especially where we have some of the new schools coming on board. There are some shifts that are happening that I can talk to at the end in terms of Head Start in the city of Newark and what the feds are planning, which is uncertain right now. which already is shifting what I shared even with the teams, the committees last week. The other piece is around the enrollment process, as was mentioned, and Ms. Baskerville's report from the Program and Information Committee and also with the Budget Committee, that our community-based providers will be using the same database. We want to be able to see what's happening with their enrollment. We were able to support some of them this year as well, but it's really having them be on the same database so we can make sure that we're tracking what's happening with pre-K enrollment as we get towards the start of the school year. A big piece that we're going to start looking at, again, we're already starting to look at some of this year, is around enrollment outreach and sort of a pre-K matters every day kind of program. We are hearing, and as I talk to the staff and talk to families and talk to teachers, et cetera, there's more and more that we need to do to make sure that there's more information out to families about the importance of pre-K. We also want to make sure that we're continuing to provide through our nurses and other partners targeted health and family health and nutrition education to families so that we can ensure that families are ensuring that children are in school every day. And so we'll start to build sort of a parent communications side of the work and use various means of communication through our advertising for enrollment, through community canvassing, social media, texting campaign, and just really leveraging our partners to make sure that families have all the information they need about the importance of pre-K, enrolling in pre-K, and how to support children as they come into pre-K. Looking forward into what we're expecting for our capacity for next year. We do want to increase our capacity. We were hoping to do more. There have been some shifts since last week that have kind of brought that number a little bit down. But again, this year we exited October 15th at about 6,486, and we are planning on building more capacity. So just to clarify, the 95% number is actually utilization, not so much the universe that we have. From the state numbers, we should be much higher, about almost 8,000 kids. So there's some work that we're also doing to look at the landscape in Newark, looking at births to age 5 and understanding what's happening with the population. And that work is going to inform us. That work is not going to be done until probably end of December, early January. And we're working with various partners to this program for parents and some other bodies to look at what's happening with the population for our young children. Where are they going? So there's more work we need to do to understand where our children are and why our children are not participating in pre-K at this age. Okay. This is a rather busy slide. We'll go through it fairly quickly, but the key pieces here around the second priority, continuing to provide a high-quality pre-K programming for children and families, is really number one. We're in the process of actually, I would say, probably this week, the team will be done doing this new quality assessments for pre-K. So the state is rolling out the new early childhood environmental rating scale. The authors of the tool, a third-party author, actually released a third edition, so that we are actually in the process of finishing up our assessments of 50% of the classrooms using what's called the ECRS 3. The other assessments that we're using in our classrooms, which is also new for Newark, is a teaching pyramid observation tool, which looks at more of the social emotional climate in the classroom and the types of interactions that are happening between children and teachers. The ECRS is looking at the environment, the materials in the classroom, and how children are actually interacting in the classroom with the materials and how are they learning. So we think there's two tools, looking at each of our classrooms, half of them getting ECRS, half of them getting TPOT, and then next year switching again would give us a good baseline to look at how we can continue to improve quality in Newark as well. Another piece that we're looking at is how to continue to strengthen the curriculum. We are in the process of doing some pilots and researching more options for Newark. With the state, again, the state was here last week, so we had some conversations with them about how to continue to strengthen what we already have. And it also leads into then how do we strengthen what's happening in our classroom with instruction, assessments, and teacher practice. We know that as we exited last year, about 35% of our children are English language learners in pre-K. We know that of the children who have IEPs, the children who have special needs, we exited last year with about 65% of them being in inclusive environments, which is a great story. And so the question is now, how do we continue to support our teachers who are going to see more and more children with special needs in their gen ed classrooms, for example, and also to continue to build more supports for children who are in self-contained classrooms. So this year, my team is actually supporting the teachers directly who are also teaching in self-contained classrooms. classrooms, so giving them more support, and we're bringing in some partners to help us do this as well. So again, continuing to strengthen teachers' use of data to drive instruction, and also continuing to help teachers with strategies around English language learners, children who have special needs. An area that we're also seeing in the classrooms in pre-K is challenging behaviors, and so we're retraining staff right now this year to know how best to set up the classroom environments to support children as well. Another last piece of it is really, again, as I mentioned, really focusing on the basis for a lot of the New Jersey pre-K programs being positive behavior strategies model, and how do we set up the classroom for all our children so that they are supported the way they're needed to be supported. Around family and community engagement, again, we'll continue to conduct a family needs survey, which gives us information about what our families' needs are, what type of workshops they may need, what type of supports they may need, what services they're accessing. We want to make sure that we understand what the needs of our families are so that we can plan what we're doing for them in the year. Our goal is also in the spring of 2017, at the end of that next school year, is actually to launch a family satisfaction survey so that we can also continue to support our families and improve the program. We also currently have continued discussions, family sessions that we want to also implement, again, for families of children who are ELs, families of children who have special needs. We want to add those components to our work as well. Last year, we started the Family Academy, which brought families, about 20 families together on weekends, almost every Saturday for about 3 months, where they got various myriad of lessons and information from everything from financial literacy to supporting children's learning. And we graduated to the first class of Family Academy. We really want to continue this work and expand that as well to more families. Around health and nutrition services, besides the services the teams are giving in schools, we noticed that there are high incidents of asthma and obesity in our children, and we really want to make sure that not only are we bringing health and nutrition lessons into the classroom, but we're also supporting families in knowing how to manage a child's asthma, for example, because we're starting to see that that's part of one of the issues that is causing children to miss school often. We will continue a Head Start program. As all may be aware, we do have a 5-year Head Start grant. We're in year 2. And there's some slightly unique features of our Head Start program. Number one is there is a considerable amount of family services that we provide to our Head Start families, where every family has to come together and with their family advocate and put a plan together and set some goals. And they work with them hand in hand to make sure families are meeting their goals. Also in our Head Start program, there's a slightly longer day, and we do have a STEM and arts program in our Head Start programs, as well as a Healthy You and Catch program with YMCA. And again, the family advocates play a huge role in this work, as well as our policy council, which is made up of parents in the program, and our advisory board as well. We will continue to work on a data system. I want to make sure that all the data that the team is collecting is in one place. So that we can look at trends and we can start to see how best to support our children and our families. So for example, some of the health data is still coming back on paper, and we want to make sure that our nurses are putting it into a system where we can start to track what's happening with our children as well. Okay. So this was kind of the plan that led us into our budget request to the state for next year. Basically, the preschool education aid is determined basically based on our projected capacity. And so you basically take your capacity number and multiply it by the cost per child, and that's how we came up with our ask. The next part of this process is actually looking at, okay, how do we now, this is our ask to the state, what are we going to do with those funds? And I've kind of described some of the programmatic aspects. But a couple of things that I did want to mention here is the process entails actually looking at our provider budgets. And we know that their budgets have been flat. Our budget has been flat from the state in terms of the cost per child hasn't changed since, I think, 07 or 08. And so we're looking at how to give our providers more flexibility so they can spend in ways that they need to. The next step is looking at our school budgets, and then we look at curriculum instruction, technology for the classroom and our staff. And that's kind of how we build what our spend plan is. So what you're seeing here in terms of the number, in terms of the request to the state, is really just based on the number of children and based on the capacity number I shared earlier, times the cost per child. And what we want to do for next year, and I know that this was shared in some of the reports, the report tonight, was that we're also seeing a larger exodus of teachers from our community-based providers. So we actually are asking the state to use some funding to provide them with some level of an increase, as well as assistant teachers and their family workers as well in the provider sites. We want to make sure that they are staying because we are also investing in them with our staff going in to support them as well. We want them to stay. So there's more work to be done there, of course, but we will continue to do that work with our providers and with the state as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. I just want to highlight a couple of points in Ms. Ofusuzama's presentation. First of all, to thank you personally for the work that you have led and are leading. It's really making a difference. So very quickly, the points I would just point out is this body of work really makes a difference in our overall mission of advancing student learning. A study in New Jersey has confirmed that children who participate in quality pre-K programs, in our pre-K programs, particularly as both 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, but even for those who just commence as 4-year-olds, leads to a significant and sustained increase in reading rates, math rates, and other academic performance in the great debate out there in the country over the value of pre-K. This study, the study that comes out of the New Jersey work, is Exhibit A in showing that it really does make a difference. A second point I'd like to highlight for the board is that there is great work going on in the pre-K to make sure that the children who are classified as in need of special education services are, to the maximum extent possible, educated in an inclusive setting. If you look at the rates of inclusion versus self-contained classrooms in pre-K, they're substantially higher, which I think portends good things as these children mature into later grades. And then thirdly, just an observation, New Jersey delivers early childhood in a unique array of settings. So as you heard, we have some early childhood programs that are actually built into our traditional public schools. We have some early childhood programs that are educated in standalone early childhood centers on a ward-by-ward basis. We have a substantial number of children who are educated by private providers. All of them are funded by the state. And what I think is interesting is that all of them are regulated, monitored, and quality assured by Nana and her team. Even the private provider ones are not sort of out there as individual private sector islands, but are governed by similar rules and regulations and quality assurance, which again, all states do this differently, but that's how we do it. So again, certainly happy to open the floor to any questions, but just wanted to make those quick comments. Thank you, Nana. Anything on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I will pronounce your name incorrectly, so I'm not going to attempt it. Now, with the outreach that which I assume is going to be very successful in trying to attract the new children to the system, have your department addressed the situation that occurred last year with the state that we're only able to enroll 16 students per classroom?
So the state code is that they're only up to 15 children per classroom. Yes.
Okay.
And that still remains.
That will still remain?
Yes, that still remains.
And now, if in fact it happens again, like it did last year, what option will you give the parents if there's 15 children already in a classroom?
So what we've done right now is, and we're still working with some families to find placements. So if a family needs addition, and this is where having us all in the same system with providers helps, because then we can know quickly where there are spots open. What happened this summer as we did our pre-K pop-up centers is we literally had to call provider by provider around the area to say who had space. So being on the same database actually means that we will get to know quicker where there is space. And if we're starting to see, I think if providers have about almost nine children, I think, and even in our schools, if there are 9 children on the wait list, then we can go back to the state and say, we may need to open more classrooms in that area. Okay. But right now it depends on space. Right now it's a space issue.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. Ms. Fonseca?
Thank you for that report, but I have a question. You mentioned about 65% of the kids with special needs and 35%, and they're being taught together, right? So there's 15 children max per classroom. How many teachers are in those classrooms?
So just to clarify, 65% of the children who have IEPs are in inclusive environments as of where we exited last year, and from last year, there were about 8% of the children who had IEPs.
Okay.
So just to give you the numbers.
Okay.
And so yes, there are 15 children per classroom. So you will see maybe one child. If you look at on aggregate, there could be some classrooms with more children with IEPs in them, but on average, you may see like one or two.
Okay, and there's one teacher in each classroom?
There's one teacher and an assistant teacher in each classroom.
Okay, so do we measure like the level of needs that those children have? Like, do we have a way of measuring that? Like, because special needs can mean anything. So how do we have something in place where we're actually measuring that? Because when I think about it, say like if we have two kids that have special needs and they need so much attention and you only have one teacher, you know, it's a lot for two kids can, you know, I know I have a little bit of experience with that. So do we have a way of measuring that? And if not, like what can we do to measure that to help kind of alleviate? Because little kids take up a lot of time. So that's why I'm asking.
So to start, the only way a child would be placed in an inclusive setting is if their IEP through this child study team process, when they do the evaluation, if the IEP says this child can be in an inclusive environment, is the only time we'll place a child in that environment. If a child has significant needs and needs a special classroom, they will be placed in a special classroom. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry,
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Jackson?
Well, you go first.
No, it's all right. I'm going to move on to another topic. If you have something on early childhood, please.
Early childhood.
proceed.
I know we discussed this, but I just want to put it on the record. Far as the providers and also the charter school providers, when the children return back to the North Public Schools, I know from the providers we get funding back, but from the charter schools, we don't get funded back. Am I correct with that?
So for the charter schools, we are basically a pass-through for funding. So when we do our numbers, and part of our budget ask is also the ask for charter schools based on what we know the state says their enrollment would be. And we saw some changes as of literally last Thursday with one of the charters probably not offering pre-K next year. So for charters, we basically send the funds directly to the charters. For the providers, we work with them on their budgets, and basically their cost per child is kind of flat as well, and it's based on us funding them for their personnel, their classroom materials, and also their building costs, which we don't do for our schools. So for the providers, that's how that funding works, and that basically, if you look at the budget year to year, they're getting the same funding every year. They wanted more flexibility to be able to spend in different lines.
Yeah, so we don't, even if we overpay the charters, we don't get that refund back.
So the charters get the exact cost per child that the state gives for everybody. The providers vary, and some of them are actually higher than our average cost per child. On average, they're actually higher. For the providers, at the end of the year, so I have a fiscal team that actually does the audits of the providers and actually looks at their spending. Most of the time they spend all their funding. Should they not spend all their funding, let's say a teacher leaves and another teacher comes in, we kind of add that back and they get that money back the next year. But sometimes if they don't spend all their money, then we get some of those funds back. But it's not very often, so. Yeah.
Mr. Lewis, you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just one more thing. Just one more thing. I'm interested in even doing a walkthrough or just to see what we teaching the kids in preschool, to see what type of learning experience they're getting in the classroom.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Okay, please join. Please come. And it's open to everybody, actually. Please come to our classrooms.
Thank you very much.
There's some great work happening.
Superintendent?
Okay, thank you. Just very quickly, I wanted to update the board. We listened very carefully to the input at the last meeting, which certainly included the recommendation that we extend the period for the development of the strategic plan. We have done that, and we have tried to accommodate the sort of two converging forces. One is to make sure that we have a strategic plan in place and an aligned budget in anticipation of the state's CUSAC review, which, while we cannot know precisely, is likely to be in the mid to late spring, as well as the counsel from members of this board that we not sort of cut short the process. And so, actually, if we can just flip the page, thank you very much. You'll see that we have tried to solve for those two concerns with a longer period of time that would give us a set of strategic priorities that reflect multiple meetings and community input in time to both align the budget and to present to the CUSAC reviewers the relationship between the budget and the strategic priorities, while at the same time including, extra time for completing the document and refining it and improving it. So this is an effort working with various stakeholders to try to solve for all concerns. Moving to the next page, please. We are very eager to update the board and the community with the information that is just now emerging from the state about how our students did on the PARCC examination. As we do that, I want to share a couple of sort of critical, values that we are trying to incorporate into our rollout and presentation of this. And essentially, it comes down to this. In the spirit of complete transparency, we want to get the data out as quickly as is possible, but also to do that in a way that is consistent with what we think are two primary values. One is we want our school communities to not hear first about these results in the newspaper or through a public board meeting, but give them an opportunity to review on a school-by-school basis the information. And secondly, and really over all of this, is the value that the purpose of this test is to enable us all to do better instructionally and in terms of student outcomes for our children. And so it's always important to bear in mind that results are not a sort of gotcha or a scorecard so much as they are an opportunity to use information to support students. And this, of course, begins with our school leaders, educators, and families. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite Dr. Barry Ehrlichson to give us additional information about the PARCC, why we have it, and what's different. Dr. Ehrlichson, probably who has previously served as the Chief Performance Officer of the New Jersey Department of Education, and probably knows more about testing and assessments and the evolution and purposes of the PARCC than anybody on earth, I think it's fair to say. And we're very grateful that as she has transitioned her role to support districts, including Newark, in making full use of these data to advance student learning. We're very grateful that she is spending time with us and is able to brief us today on a little bit about the PARCC.
Great, thank you. As the superintendent said, my name is Barry Ehrlichson. I'm a special assistant to the commissioner at the Department of Education, working around data literacy. I've been dispatched to 6 districts in the state to work on unpacking PARCC data, helping districts understand them, as well as think about larger and broader assessment strategies. I am very pleased to be here in Newark. Newark holds a special place in my heart. I did my student teaching here about 10 years ago in Franklin. And I have already had the opportunity to meet a couple of board members in Hudson County when they came out and to my presentation with the School Boards Association. And I had a lovely conversation, as Ms. Baskerville-Richardson mentioned at the committee meeting for instruction and program. I know you should have received an email inviting you to smaller group conversations next Monday and Tuesday morning. Please feel free, I will be there to answer any specific questions that you have about PARCC in an informal setting. One of the things I think it's really important for us to reflect on is how we got to Park and what its purpose was. And I don't want to reflect too much on or do too much of a history lesson, but wanted to remind folks that the origins of Park came from the High School Redesign Steering Committee, which was established in the last few years of the Corzine administration. It was a group of folks from all of our partners, School Boards Association, NJEA, principals. It had separate subcommittees with special education interests as well as Abbott interests, and this was the vision statement that they put forward at the time. There were two major recommendations coming out of that committee. One was that we needed to have standards that were aligned with college and career readiness, and the second was that we needed to have new tests. It has, of course, taken us since 2008 to 2015 to realize that vision of that committee. Why Park, and what were we trying to accomplish? This was a courageous statement back in 2008 that the High School Redesign Task Force made, which is that HESPA, our high school proficiency assessment, was not measuring college or career readiness, and that it was all but ignored by our post-secondary institutions. And that has had a couple of really detrimental effects, particularly on Abbott students. First, we were convincing families that passing HESPA meant that their kids were ready for college, when in fact that was not the case. Passing HESPA wasn't related to a student's readiness to take credit-bearing classes in a post-secondary institution. In Essex County, in the fall of 2013, about 2,000 students were full-time students in Essex County. About 500 of those students came from Newark Public School System, and 84% of the first-time students there needed to take a class in remedial class, a class that they should have mastered in high school. About 66% of them took a class called computation, which is even a precursor to Algebra 1. Coming immediately out of the High School Redesign Task Force, those of you who've been around will remember that we gave an Algebra 1 test across the state that we worked with other states in the consortium of folks. The second major impact for students coming out of Abbott school districts was that they would often pass HESPA in their junior year, in the spring of their junior year, go all the way through senior year, apply to our county colleges, and be asked by the county colleges to take AccuPlacer. So they were arriving on campuses in the spring of their senior year, being required to take more tests, and it was at that point in senior spring where the county colleges would say, you need to take the following remedial courses before you can take credit-bearing classes. So we were convincing families with our HESPA test that they were ready to be graduating from our high schools, and then yet putting the onerous of the remedial courses on the families. Because when you go to the county colleges and you start taking non-credit-bearing classes, that comes out of your financial aid, Pell Grants, parents' pockets, everything else. And as even the graduating numbers for Essex County show, very few students are finishing in 2 years, very few students are finishing in 3 years, and some of that is at least related to the idea that our students burn through their financial aid, taking classes that they should have taken and mastered in high school. So a courageous statement back in 2008 that our tests themselves were not measuring college and career readiness, and that they were being all but ignored in our post-secondary institutions. And just a final word on this, right? As Ms. Baskerville-Richardson mentioned, not every student is going to go to a post-secondary experience, go to college. But I personally believe that those who choose to do so ought to be prepared to be enrolled as full-time students in the credit-bearing classes. So the strong recommendation coming out of the High School Redesign Task Force was to replace HESPA with a series of end-of-course assessments in math. We did that immediately with the Algebra 1 test. This direction was confirmed by a different task force in 2012, that we were on the right track with end-of-course assessments. And giving end-of-course assessments, of course, is nothing new. It's about what 30% of our highest performing students participate in every year in advanced placement or the international baccalaureate programs. You take AP Calculus, you take the AP Calculus test, there's a really tight connection then between the standards and the instruction and the assessment. And PARC, with the end of course assessments, extends that idea of that alignment all the way down into the courses that lead to AP. Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, as well as the English language tests. So there's a bit of an equity issue here where our students in our highest performing classes were having that tight alignment, having teachers who had that data to reflect on their instruction, but students who didn't reach AP or IB didn't. So that's one of the first pieces of differences. So how does PARC inform student learning, and why is it a different test than NJASC and HESPA? And I wanted to sort of talk about the idea that when we were giving these tests alone as a state of New Jersey, that NJASC and HESPA test questions were never made public. It was cost prohibitive. We had to reuse the test questions from year to year. So for most teachers, it was a complete black box. The students took the assessment. They never saw the questions. They never saw how students were being assessed. In October, the PARC Consortium released 850 test questions that were actually used last spring as part of the assessments. At the bottom of this slide, you'll see the web address where you can get to them and ultimately sort through them. This allows teachers now to look at the end process, to look at and understand how their students' learning is being assessed and reflect backwards. The next piece of this, and this is, I know, very difficult to read, but I wanted to put a whole example on this. So we also released scored student. So in those 800 test questions, we released about 10 responses from students for each one of those test questions. So in this instance,
you entered access code 7407885.
This is the actual response, and over here are the scoring comments from the folks who scored the assessments. And you can see, not necessarily on the slide, but you can see in your slide deck that the italics is actual words that the student wrote. It says the student demonstrated this, and then it points to how did the student arrive at that conclusion. And so teachers can use this for professional learning communities and other places to talk through what does it mean for a student to get full credit, partial credit, half credit, no credit. What does it mean for the demonstration of student work? Finally, one of the things that educators across the state are celebrating is that for the first time in New Jersey history, we're going to be able to do what's called an item analysis. This is an example of the type of functionality that the PARC system is developing and will deliver in January. And what this is you can see on this line right through here, the average of how many points a school earned on a particular test question. Then you can see what standard the test question was aligned to and what was the actual student evidence that we were trying to solicit. So schools can actually go through and rank out of their data which items and standards did we do well on, which ones didn't we do well on, and identify sort of the curricular gaps and instructional needs. And this, of course, is, as I said, it's new partially due to the fact that we've never had the ability to release our test questions in the past. New Jersey did participate in an independent review of our tests from the National Network of State Teachers of the Year. We gave them old NJASC test questions to look at. They also had PARC test questions. They came together over the summer. Our role, as I mentioned, was just to give them the test questions. They formulated their own methodology, and this is a report that they independently wrote. And again, the web location is there for you if you'd like to see the full report. And these were their findings, that the new tests better reflect the range of reading and math knowledge, that they better reflect the full range of cognitive complexity, that they better align with the kinds of strong instructional practices that teachers believe should be used in the classroom and therefore better support great teaching and learning throughout the school year. And that although they were rigorous and demanding, that they are in fact that they reflect grade level appropriate expectations. And then specifically, this was a comment from New Jersey's Teacher of the Year who participated in this work. She said, I came with some strong preconceived notions. Park was the boogeyman in my district. Our whole district shut down in March because Park had come to town. But looking at the actual form, I see that it's a great test. In fact, I was surprised. I thought that the rigor would be so high, but it was appropriate. I spent 6 months grumbling about Park, but now I see that that wasn't warranted. We hadn't seen the test, and media had stoked concerns from the public and parents, but that missed so much about what these tests are about. So to reiterate, New Jersey's the Park assessments replaced our old NJ Ask and HESPA tests. Students took Park in grades 3 to 11 in language arts and literacy, and students took Park Math in grades 3 to 8 and in the end of course assessments in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Park has 5 performance levels. Level 1, not yet meeting grade level expectations. 2, partially meeting. 3, approaching grade level expectations. 4, meeting. 5, exceeding grade level expectations. What we mean by grade level expectations is a demonstration of the mastery of the standards in those particular grades, or in the case of Algebra 1 or Geometry, the content of that course. And here are the state level results. And I'm just going to read one line of data to level set with us. But grade 3, 15% of the students across the state of New Jersey, now these are New Jersey-wide data, 15% of the students were in level 1, 18% were partially meeting expectations in level 2, 24% were approaching expectations in level 3, 39% meeting expectations in level 4, and 5% exceeding expectations in level 5. And then this column summarizes these two columns together. So 44% of the students across the state of New Jersey in grade 3 English Language Arts met or exceeded their grade level expectations. These are our math outcomes. There's one quirk that I just want to make you aware of. In grade 8, we did have about 30,000 students skip grade 8 and skip the grade 8 Park assessment, instead taking Algebra 1. So we do not believe that the grade 8 test data is representative of the state as a whole, because accelerated students in grade 8 middle school classes were invited to take the Algebra 1 test in lieu of the grade 8 outcomes. As Ms. Baskerville-Richardson emphasized, and I'll echo her comments, it's really important for us to treat our Park data as a baseline. As I mentioned, HESPA was not measuring college and career readiness. The Park exams at this do that. So it's hard for us to know how to feel about a baseline score in absence of a trend. And so I wanted to put forth a couple of types of contextual pieces of data for us to consider. There are 3 tests that work to measure college and career readiness. They're all independent tests of the state. One of them is the SAT. In 2015, 44% of our students across the state who took the SAT met the college and career ready determination set by the College Board. 43% of our students who took the ACT last year met the benchmark established by the ACT across the state. And the last indicator that I want you to take a look at is the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. New Jersey participates in the 12th grade test, and in 2013, 41% of the students who took the 12th grade NAEP met the NAEP's definition of college and career readiness. And all of those methodologies are different, and I'm happy to explain how they're different. But they align really closely with what we're seeing that's coming out of our Park data. So in grade 11, 41% of our students who took the grade 11 language arts test met or exceeded grade level expectations, which of course is really tightly aligned with what we see inside NAEP in terms of that 41%. and is very tightly coupled with what we can learn about ourselves from the SAT and the ACT. You'll see some other outcomes. We're performing slightly above NAEP in grade 4 in language arts, 51 compared to 42. Also in language arts, 52 compared to 46. A little bit below our NAEP expectations in math in grades 4, 41 to 49. I don't have any of the math outcomes up there, again, as I said, because grade 8 math we don't consider to be representative of the state and don't want to compare it to grade 8 NAEP. The final thing that's on this slide is, I mentioned, coming immediately out of the Corzines High School Redesign Task Force, we did give an Algebra 1 test across the state. The last time we gave that test was 2011. You'll see that data there. 35% of the students who participated in the Algebra 1 test in 2011 met the expectations of that test, which again is really tightly coupled with what we have in our first year PARC results, where we see 36% of the students meeting or exceeding expectations in Algebra 1. So although it's a baseline and we don't have any trend data, we're very encouraged to see that the results align with the other outcomes that we have from third-party assessments. And we're looking forward to growing in 2016. Typically, in large-scale assessment development, there's a second-year bump in terms of student test scores, so we'll be watching that carefully. As part of the PARC Consortium, we've developed a lot of resources for parents. This is an example of the parent guide that is available in multiple languages that will help parents interpret their student score reports. I wanted to give an overview of what that looks like. The first thing in the score is the student's actual score points and where they are in terms of the 5 performance levels. This is new for New Jersey. As part of the score report, we're presenting the school average, the district average, the state average, and the PARC average to help parents understand how their child is doing relative to peers. Understanding that my child is performing as well as their peers in a particular school or district is helpful for parents to gain information and context about their student outcomes. Oops, one second. There's also a subscale in reading and a subscale in writing that further helps parents drill down and understand how their students are doing. And then the various categories. You can see in writing, we talk about whether students are meeting expectations in writing expression or the knowledge of conventions. In reading, how are students doing with fiction or literary text, the nonfiction or informational text, and then ultimately vocabulary. So we can actually talk to parents about their students doing really well with the interpretation and understanding of fiction, needing more supports with nonfiction work, and the kinds of resources or books that might be read at home to help that along. There's a video, and again, I've put the web address for you where we've described this for parents so they can watch a video walking through the score reports as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Perkins to talk about next steps.
Thank you. So, as came up at the Program and Instruction Committee, there's an interest in, as we get more into this data and anticipate sharing the district level data next Tuesday and school level data beyond that, the question of how do we respond to it? What are we doing to address the need to improve instruction and to build on the work that we've been doing? So I wanted to revisit some of the slides and some of the points that have been raised at previous board meetings, in particular the presentation that Assistant Superintendent Leone did back in the October board meeting, as well as what's been captured in our district improvement plan statements as part of the CUSAC process. So just briefly, there are 4 main areas where we're trying to continue our efforts to improve instruction through, as it says, rigor and inclusiveness, measuring academic progress, technology and innovation, and training and support. And so in each of those areas, we believe we're on the right track, and we're increasing our efforts to improve instruction and improve the outcomes for students through these targeted investments. Again, briefly, in terms of rigor and inclusiveness, as the Program and Instruction Committee has received many updates and presentations, we have been revamping our curriculum, particularly in literacy and math, to ensure that students in schools have the best-in-class resources in those areas and resources that are truly aligned to the college readiness levels of expectation that are captured in PARCC and other measures of college readiness. And those have been going on for a number of years, and we've had updates at the Program Instruction Committee this year. We continue to look for new ways to pilot and expand innovative approaches, including in science with the Next Generation Science Standards and social studies with a program called Reading Like an Historian. And as Ms. Baskerville-Richardson alluded to, there'll be a special Program and Instruction Committee on Monday to look more in depth at that work. And finally, with all of this work, we want to make sure the inclusiveness piece is there, that all students have access to this rigorous content. And that's where we're spending a lot of time looking at universal design for learning, which is a well-regarded approach to helping all teachers plan better to ensure all students can truly have access to the rigorous content. Moving to another area of investment in terms of measuring academic progress, we're committed to getting teachers the best information possible about how their students are doing, not only from the state assessment, which of course only happens once a year, but ongoing through interim assessments and other measures that they can use and embed within their classroom in meaningful, organic ways. We also are targeting our professional learning through a number of leadership institutes, as is listed here: Principal Leadership Institute, Vice Principal Leadership Institute, and Leadership Institute for Teacher Teams, which are, the acronyms are there, PLI, VPLI, and LIFT, which are focused on how to use both the curriculum and assessment to really understand where students are and where to make adjustments in teaching and in the support of teachers. Perhaps most exciting, and what many of you may have read about in the press around our work, is the expansion of the technology and innovation that we have been able to do through the investment that this board has heard about through 11,000 new Chromebooks, Google Chromebooks, as well as smartboards and other things. We are using those resources primarily to move instruction, to really embed the digital learning that I know Ms. Fonseca spoke about in her committee report, to ensure that this is primarily about moving instruction and not just about testing. And we have classrooms and schools across the district engaged in this work, and have had some of you come out to look at that work. We encourage more of you to come see some of the innovative examples of classrooms leveraging that digital learning. And finally, and this is one quick piece on that, in alluding to where you might have seen this reported down in the press, we did receive an award for some of the learning that we're doing, and we're excited about that, and we're continuing to build on the ability to leverage that technology for the best use for instruction. And finally, what brings it all together is the training and support for our educators through the leadership institutes that I referenced earlier, as well as a number of online resources that we continue to enhance and improve, that you can all access through our website, and that we will continue to share and have discussions on at our Program and Instruction Committee. And with that, I will, and finally, there is to return to the superintendent's earlier point about transparency and our desire to share data, but at the same time to do it carefully and responsibly. This timeline shows how we plan on rolling out the data, starting first with getting schools the information they need so they can first have the conversations with their communities, and then sharing it all with you all and the larger public starting next Tuesday at our regular board meeting. And with that, I will turn it back to our superintendent.
Well, thank you very, very much, and we're glad to take any questions.
Ms. Baskerville-Richardson?
I'm sorry. First, I'd like to just go back to the strategic plan, since we didn't stop for questions.
Yes, ma'am.
At that point. So, well, I'll just, you know me, I'll just ask all three of my questions at once.
Okay, I better get my pen out.
Okay, so the first one is that I believe that you've decided not to use New Jersey School Board Association to basically manage and facilitate the strategic planning process. So I would like to know what the relationship of NJSBA will be to the process. And second, who has been chosen, or who are you considering to manage or facilitate the process? How much will it cost? And is the district paying for this, or is it being paid by outside funding? And my third question has to do with community input into the process. And this is basically a statement, not a question. And that is and I'm going to speak basically for people in the community who speak to me about this, that the desire, the request, I won't use demand yet because hopefully it won't have to get to that point, but that the community, people who are interested in being in this process, who at least those who have spoken to me, are very much interested in not just being listened to, but also concerned that their opinions will not just be listened to, hopefully heard, but that they will be weighted in the decision-making process, and that within the structure that people will be presented with to understand that, they will know what that weight is, how their participation will be weighted, so that there is fair weight given to it, and so also that there are no unrealistic expectations.
Okay. Thank you. Let me take them in that order. As mentioned, I have been in communication with the NJSBA. My understanding is that a senior delegate from the NJSBA will be facilitating your strategic session on December 17th. I have actually spoken to Dr. Feinsod, the president, or what, the executive director, chairman, whatever he is, the head of the NJSBA, and I've said we would very much welcome the involvement and inclusion of the NJSBA in a consultative role, and I am in the process of scheduling a meeting to sort of pin down exactly what that will be. So they will be involved in your retreat, and they will be involved in the process. In terms of project managing the organization, I have not entered into a contract with anybody. I have made inquiries to the same entity that built this, that project managed the effort and actually did the drafting of the Great Expectations Plan, which I believe it was in my packet. It may very well be in yours as well. They're called KSA. They come very highly recommended from a number of different sources. In terms of funding, we need to try to secure outside funding, philanthropic funding, because we certainly don't want to, unless we absolutely have to, spend money on this as opposed to in our schools. And I am confident, that we will be able to secure that funding. I don't have a price yet. I don't have a proposal, but we are confident that we can secure that funding, and I'll be happy to share those details as they emerge. I really appreciate the point about the difference between listening and agreeing, and it's a hard balance that all of us play in our roles. It is an absolute commitment that we will include and listen, all of us, very carefully, but I do want to underscore the difference between listening and agreeing. I cannot give any assurance that every piece of input will be included or weighted in some kind of formal balancing process, but we will all, everyone at this table will consider that input and decide which are meritorious and which are not, or how to weigh them into the ultimate set of recommendations.
So thank you. I think that it's going to be very important that the community understand very clearly how, if their opinions will be weighted, and the same thing for the board. This is, and I've said it so many times, the importance of this process in terms of how the district moves forward, and the importance of the community in this process. So what I'm hearing you, but I'm also a bit concerned that I'm not hearing that the community opinion will be weighted in the process. And I don't expect you to be able to say, right now exactly what that would look like. But I think it is very important as we move forward that there's not the expectation that the community will simply come, talk, get it all off their chest, and that there will be no inclusion the community's suggestions. And I'm not saying that that's what will happen. I think it's very important at this particular juncture in the development of how we move forward with our schools and our planning, that everyone understand up front how things are going to work.
So I hear you loud and clear, and I really do not mean to obfuscate or dodge the question, but you and I have been at meetings, for example, when an individual stood up and said, I genuinely believe that we ought to have a Mandarin inclusion class in every, mandatory for every high school, because that is the language of the future. Now, is that the community, or is that one person's perspective? There are folks who will adamantly say that I think the key to effective education, many people will say this, is reducing class size to a number that's in the teens, and we would have to balance whether that is an appropriate, or whether that's even feasible in light of fiscal reality. So the definition of what is the community is very much important to the question about to what extent do we weigh it. And I'm just saying I hear you. It's a complicated. Honestly, complicated question to answer.
So, sir, it is not a complicated question to answer if we, and I don't want to go back and forth with this, but if we begin with respect for the community, then we begin by knowing that the opinions of the community will be weighted in the process. And that's basically, what the community needs to know and wants to hear. Of course, nothing that every individual comes up with is going to be workable, and this is going to be the art of compromise is going to be very much in the forefront here. But so let me just, I don't want to prolong this. I think I would suggest that at our retreat, is it possible? I know this is very late, but if not at the retreat, but very soon, that the board have audience with the KSA organization as well as with the New Jersey School Board Association, because the disconnect to me seems to be that we're going to be meeting with the New Jersey School Board Association, but they're not going to be facilitating the process. So we're meeting with the organization that does do this work, but will not actually be doing this work for our district. And when we initially requested New Jersey School Board Association to be at the retreat, we did that because of our expressed desire that New Jersey School Board Association actually manage and facilitate the process. So I think it would be very helpful for the board, in addition to hearing from New Jersey School Board Association, to also hear from KSA, as they would be the ones actually facilitating the process, and that might help to raise the comfort level, at least of the board, with what the process is going to look like.
I'd be glad to pass on that request. I can't speak for their scheduling, but I will certainly see what I can do.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
Thank you. Rather quickly, if we can turn our attention to slide number 35, and Dr. excuse me. Excuse me, I apologize. Dr. Perkins touched on it, and I'm actually glad to see the statement that's labeled under key focus for academic investments. And I've talked about this numerously in our committee meetings. Understanding that HESPA didn't meet the rigor needed to enter college. Personally, my understanding from HESPA throughout my lifetime through high school was that it wasn't necessarily a tool to gauge college readiness, but an assessment to gauge your knowledge and understanding and completion of high school. But again, I could be wrong. I don't know everything. I've harped on the fact that we can't raise the bar and keep the method of education or the method of teaching the same. And what I mean by that is we have a very, very serious issue within North Public Schools where a lot of our ninth graders are coming in not on the ninth grade level. In fact, they're not coming in on the 8th grade, 7th grade, or 6th grade level. The reading comprehension level, as per reports, have been some as low as 3rd to 4th grade. And now we hit 9th grade, and we're throwing a 9th grade book in front of them, and now we're saying, well, we're going to get you ready for college. Well, wait a minute. What about my elementary and middle school years? We can't skip from 3rd grade to 9th grade to college readiness in less than 4 years. So, again, I'm glad to see the rigor and inclusiveness and measuring the progress. I'm glad to see that we're working on those levels. However, it still seems to be a gap between elementary and college. And in high school, we're doing all this prepare for college. Well, I have yet to prepare you for late elementary to high school. And it seems like we have this big gap. So, I'm just speaking from my understanding, my knowledge, the struggles that I went through school, the struggles that families continue to go through now. It's great. We have some type of timeline with park scores. To my understanding, I know some districts who have already received their scores. I don't know what's taking NORC so long, but I don't want to step on nobody's toes. With understanding the scores from Park, will they be broken down by school? What would the data look like? And I know we went through that through the presentation, but just for better understanding, when we get a per school score or per school percentage, will that in turn tell us, okay, we need to work on this classroom or we're having issues here? Or are the teachers strong enough and or what are the other issues? Because aside from the teaching aspect, we can have a fabulous teacher. But if we have those socioeconomical issues that we most definitely have in our district, that would definitely come into play in terms of education. So, these are a lot of factors that go into this. So again, I'm glad to see the steps we're taking, but again, that big gap.
So I'd like both Dr. Perkins and Dr. Ehrlichson to comment on the substance of your question, but just to introduce the discussion. I have to completely agree with virtually everything you said. And one of the reasons that the NJASC and the HESPA legacy tests are being replaced by the Park is they did not even pretend to be vertically aligned, meaning they did not even pretend to move from 3rd grade through 12th grade with a progressive body of knowledge that would culminate in, as you point out, the HESPA didn't even pretend to culminate in college and career readiness, and the Park intends to. So that is indeed one of the major objectives of the test. Secondly, it's very important that we keep bearing in mind what I think is your central point here, is that this is not just an assessment about how are you doing. It is a challenge and an opportunity to do better in preparing our students and preparing our teachers to be successful with our students. The state has been very measured and slow in terms of the sort of consequences, if you will, associated with the Park. I believe, and Dr. Ehrlichson will, I hope, confirm this or correct this, that it is not a graduation requirement. At the earliest, it would be for those who are currently in the eighth grade. So there's a lot of build-up time to sort of adjust instruction, and it may in fact be even those who are 7th grade. It's something that's being resolved. So with that as just a couple of, and we will, of course, on the schedule we've described, get the results to you at whatever level you want, but certainly at the school level, and at the school level, principals and teachers will see it at the student level and be able to break down, as one of the slides Dr. Ehrlichson showed, that will indicate not only broad areas like English language arts, but, particular standards and substandards within that. So would either of you care to supplement? Or?
Yes, just briefly, as you point out, Mr. Jackson, the inclusiveness goes along with rigor, because if we just do rigor without really focusing on how we're helping those students who, for example, are a few grades levels below, that's clearly not going to work. What we also don't want to do is some of the things that we've done in the past, and I'm not saying Newark specifically, but across education, which is to just do remediation all the time and never to give kids the access to the complex information. So as you may recall, at our program instruction committee, when Nick Romagnolo from math talked about, you don't stop teaching the rigorous math and the grade level math to students who are struggling. You teach them both the things they need to get there, and you have them practice the new content. The only way to do that is with additional time and to focus on fewer things and to go more in depth with that work. And that's the challenge, and also the exciting potential of what we've been trying to do for the last few years, and a number of districts have been being able to do. The other thing I just would highlight, that you've been very passionate in your description of the kinds of helpful education you received and things that could have been better. And I think what we just saw in terms of the level of detail that Park provides teachers on what's working, what's not working, and the reports in terms of the level of analysis and how kids are off or on track is an enormously helpful resource that hasn't been available in the past, and that could shine more of a helpful light on where things are going well, where things aren't, and to make the positive practices that you've described from your own experience be more the norm across classrooms. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Dr. Erickson.
So I want to also echo the comment that you made about getting ready for college doesn't begin in ninth grade, and the superintendent's comment about aligned assessments. We never made a claim that being proficient in grade 3 NJ Ask meant that you were on track to being ready for college and career. In the same way that we are now saying that is true of Park. With a system of aligned assessments, you can talk about a third grader who is on track and offers the types of supports and interventions as early as we can to make sure that we're not looking at trying to do 5, 6, 7 years of education in the 4 years of high school. So I think that's a really important point worth echoing. The other thing that I want to say is that as we unpack Park data, it's a progressive set of steps. And starting at the highest levels and moving on down, as you meant, all the way down to the item analysis, instructional practices, strategies, and just to recognize that while Park is probably the best test the state's ever given, it only helps us ask better questions. And so the need to engage with stakeholders like yourselves, as well as principals and educators, to help them ask questions that then we can go out and we'll continue those types of conversations. The district and most districts in the state are now working on shifting our culture from something that's been primarily about finding about test scores in the Star Ledger, talking about summative scores as being disconnected, or the test data being disconnected from instruction, solely about accountability and being on some sort of list under the federal government, to a culture that is about professionalism, engaging with stakeholders, uncovering the curriculum, supporting students. And that shift is new behaviors. It is going to require new behaviors from the district, from teachers, from other educators, and it's going to take a little bit of time to do that. So that's as you saw in the timeline release, we're trying to allow for all of those professional behaviors to occur so that our teachers, our school communities have an opportunity to digest data before the Star Ledger puts it in a drop-down box, and engage in making sure that people feel supported around the shift to the Park scores.
Wonderful. And just rather quickly, this is more of a comment. And by no means am I trying to sound discouraging or negative, but my philosophy, personal philosophy, is instead of focusing on getting everyone ready for college, we produce well-rounded, educated citizens so that they therefore have the choice to either go to college or a trade school, or maybe serve in our armed forces. Again, I'm not trying to sound negative at all. Some people aren't good in school. I can take myself, for example. And it's not necessarily to bash the intellect, because we have a lot of intellectual, bright students within North Public Schools, but some people just don't do well with academics. Some people are very hands-on, and quite frankly, we need hands-on people for the people who love to drive BMWs and Mercedes. When they break down, we're not going to send it to we're going to send it to a mechanic, someone who's good with their hands. So just with my own personal philosophy, and I'll get off my soapbox so we continue the meeting, we should be focused on producing well-educated, well-rounded citizens who can read, comprehend, write, do arithmetic, math, so that we can further grow our working economy and we can compete.
Sorry to interrupt. I just so enthusiastically agree with you. I just want to make sure, particularly the example that you bring forth about mechanics, the type of diagnostic machines, the data that come out of it that now talk about how your engine is functioning is probably even more sophisticated than a blood test and understanding what your blood test means. So the type of skills, the analysis, the critical thinking that we're talking about measuring and encouraging in instruction is exactly applicable to that level of work that students who enter careers need. Now that's different in my mind than a job. A student who's entering a career is going to need to be able to literally take the outputs of the diagnostic machinery and form an opinion about what's wrong with the engine. And it's a very, I have a tremendous respect because it's something, of course, that I'm not capable of diagnosing in my own life around why the engine makes noise.
Ms. Ms. Fonseca?
Here. I too was on page 35 and had just a simple question, but first I did want to say that just like Mr. Jackson said, that it's great that we have like this goal and kind of focus for our kids because it motivates them too, I believe. But I had a basic question where we say engaging classroom resources and teacher instruction. Are we making sure that all of our kids have the accurate textbooks for preparing them with this testing? And not only the testing, but just the academic in itself. And how are we auditing that per se? Because meeting with different people in the community and just hearing from certain parents and stuff, we hear, they don't have textbooks in all the classrooms, or, they have to wait until another classroom is done so they can borrow it from the other class. So, while I agree with all this and I think that we can definitely accomplish this if we really put all of the right resources into it. But I just want to make sure that we're starting with the basics, and that's making sure that our kids have what they need in their classrooms, just like a basic textbook. So how are we making sure that that's actually happening?
Well, I'll speak to what I know best, which is that my office is directly connected to ensuring that all classrooms have literacy and math curricula, that they have the access to the Chromebooks, that the pilots that we're doing in science and social studies are reaching all the schools that are participating. So in short, there's been an enormous effort, and we hear every day, especially in September, where there's, we're missing a book here or there, and I can tell you that we respond as quickly as possible because clearly you need to have the resources to be able to engage all students. If there are individual cases that you're coming across, as I think we've raised in previous meetings, where you're hearing that they don't have certain resources. In addition, I should say I work directly with the science kits and making sure the science kits are in every school. But again, if there are specific cases in which you're hearing specific schools and classrooms that don't have adequate resources, then please let me know, and we would be more than happy to follow up.
Excuse me, sorry. It's not so much individual cases. It's just like what we've heard throughout the, hearing people from the community. But the purpose of my question is not those specific cases, because I think it should be equal for all children. But my question is more so, how are we checking it overall? Like, I get what you're saying, like, the science kits and this, but how are we like evaluating it per school? Like, if I don't know what the dynamic is. So that's why I'm asking, like, how are we doing it per school, like per classroom, to make sure that everything is there? Do we have something like that in place is more so what I'm asking. Not that in September we're starting and then, of course everything is brand new, the kids are just coming in, but overall, how are we maintaining and making sure that there are books in the classrooms? That's more so what I'm trying to ask.
So can I differentiate between two possible interpretations of your question? One is the physical materials, right? Is there a science book? And the other is what I actually think is a deeper challenge, and I might see if Dr. Perkins or Mr. Haggerty could answer this, or how they might answer this. So there has been a tremendous effort to change, for example, the literacy and the math curriculum so that the textbooks themselves are aligned to higher expectations and higher standards. And you've heard a lot about that in prior meetings. What I hear sometimes is that if you go into a high school, even though there is a rigorous math program available, that many of the students are put in a foundations class or whatever the word was, that even if you do well in it is not going to culminate in your being successful in taking an Algebra 1 examination. So I'm hearing two interpretations of your question. One is the books, and maybe we could get Mr. Haggard. How do we know that the actual physical materials are there? And then the second is, how do we know that the right level of rigor and expectation is being deployed for all students, even if the books are there?
Yep. So it's a combination of sort of, I would say, ask and verify from our schools. So what we do, similar to what Dr. Perkins mentioned at the beginning of the school year, is we, at the beginning of the year, in our preparations for school readiness, one of the items is, do you have all necessary instructional materials for all of your classes? And then get back from the principal, and sometimes it's the vice principals, kind of helping with that work, identify where there are needs. There's some areas that the district provides, some areas that schools provide. So what I can say with confidence is we did not get areas in September. If there were areas that needed to be met, we met them. Now, that's sort of the ask. Then there's the verify, right, which is our ongoing work in schools where we meaning the district teams, right, that go out to support schools, but also part of the work around supporting schools is holding schools accountable for expectations. So those are educators who are, specialists in mathematics instruction, in English language arts instruction, in general pedagogy that are in our schools regularly. They're in schools 4 out of the 5 days of the week, every week, and they're in classrooms. And so they're also there to, it's not their primary goal to verify if materials are there, but believe me, if materials are not there, it's going to be evident right away. And we ask the question, why were these 3 students, let me make something up, why were 3 students sharing one book? Right, if that were a situation, we would ask, is that because all 3 students don't have books? If so, we need to correct that, right? So that's part of the verify, where we're in schools very regularly, our teams in classrooms to sort of check on the implementation of these things. So those are sort of the 2 concrete steps. And again, wherever there is a need, believe me, there is an accelerated effort to fix that right away. The last thing I would say is there's a bit of a, and this should not come off as sort of sounding like, oh, that sounds like an excuse, because it's not. Many of our curricula now are quite honestly relying less on a traditional textbook. So particularly in mathematics, it's fundamentally an online curricula, right? Where what we need more is a photocopier and a smartboard. Those and Chromebooks to a certain extent, but photocopier and a smartboard are the 2 key things because it's not a bound book from which we use, right? It's units that are through a curriculum that isn't in a textbook. Social studies is similar, where you might have a textbook as sort of the ground, as a foundational resource for kids to read. We are more and more using documents, primary source documents that may be pulled from a textbook, but more often than not are not. They're pulled from other sources that are sort of cut and pasted, and even one of the curricula we've adopted called Reading Like a Historian is the same thing. It's not a bound text, it's more copies of materials that have been provided. So again, that's not to say that we don't have textbooks. Obviously, we do in a lot of places, but there is an ongoing shift towards more kind of non-textbook type resources for our classrooms that we're likely to see more of, not less than in the future.
All right. Thank you for that information. And I actually was going to mention that, like, a lot of stuff we can copy, and now it's the 21st century, so a lot of stuff is computerized. So I get that point, and thank you for that. But I'm just going to ask from your team, if they report to you, if they would just please look really deep into making sure that every school does have their books. Just something that they should just highlight on when they make these trips to these schools and stuff, because I know, just to speak of a few off the top of my head, and like I said, there's several, everything is equal to me, but I know I've heard Barringer not having books, Hawthorne, I was there myself, and I remember I was in one classroom, and the teacher next door was waiting for the books that we had for the kids to read them to the other kids. So just little things, and I'm only mentioning those two, but that's not what I don't want us to just focus on that, but just generalize to the team that they should really look into that, because if we're going to have these expectations, we need to have the basics. But I do appreciate the efforts and what you explained. So all of you, thank you.
Any other board members? Thank you very much, Superintendent, for the report. Next, we have public participation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the public participation portion of the meeting. As a reminder, time limits for all speakers are enforced. There's no sharing or granting of speaking time to others. Speakers must be present when their name is called. All speakers are required to give their names and addresses. The public participation portion at business meetings is limited to 10 speakers, first come, first serve. Examples of unacceptable behavior that are not permitted include but are not limited to naming district employees and engaging in personal attacks, slurs, excessive loudness, calling out, yelling, generally disruptive behavior, attempting to disrupt the meeting, or inciting others to do so. Public participation is intended to allow individual members of the public the opportunity to address the board and the administration on issues of public concern, not as a forum for two-way dialogue with the board members or district officials. The superintendent or Madam Chair may respond to questions either at the end of the session, or responses may be provided at a later time. The superintendent or chair may interrupt any speaker or terminate any speaking privilege if the speaker's comments are disruptive or obscene. An individual may be cautioned that a personally directed statement may be slanderous or defaming, and the individual may be liable for his or her statements. Attempts to hijack or filibuster the proceedings, repeated interrupting or badgering the board members or district officials, repetitive and truculent speech, or disregard of the rules of decorum will not be tolerated and may subject the individual or group to removal from the meeting. And if necessary, the meeting may be adjourned.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cole.
Okay, my first question is to, I guess, Charlotte. I just want to ask, what is the process for two public schools to submit an application to become a charter school when they're supposed to be public schools and under the board supervision? Who gives that permission for them to submit an application to change a public school into a charter school? And let me get my pen. Oh, you don't have to, I have another question. That one was for you. Second, for Mr. Cerf. Can you please just find out or appoint somebody to find out the cost of what it's going to cost you to use that agency right there? The book you have. You said, yeah, for the plan, and ask the New Jersey School Board what it would cost for them to do it, so that you can be transparent to the public with one course over the other course. We get a course analysis and see what the difference in the course is. Because I also want to say, when you say the public and individual voices, I know a lot of parents that come and speak before the Newark Public School Board. We speak for the community because we're in the community. Like I've been to PTO meetings in charter schools. I've been to PTO board meetings in charter schools. I've been to PTO and PTA meetings in public schools. Okay, and when I go to these PTA meetings, and matter of fact, they just asked me to be on a bullying committee for one of the charter schools. So I'm in all of the schools. I am supporting my community. When I come to speak, I speak as an advocate for my community. When we ask you to do something and I speak for the public, I'm telling you what our community wants. Now, that's why I say sometimes I find it hard to believe, like, people hear you, but they don't understand you. And our community want a voice in what our children have in our schools, because your community where you guys live have a voice in, and you have a voice in what your children have. Okay, so when this plan is put together, it's not a question of whether we should have it. It's a question that the public should be at the table making any plans for our communities and the schools that our children attend. Second, I just wanted to say that with the supplies in the school in September, the problem with, to me, the board here is they do a lot of rhetoric, and when we have I have an expectation of excellence. I was born, raised here in Newark. I was educated. I'm a Rough Rider from West Eye. I'm educated in Newark Public School System, and and I also taught under Angelica Nelms in the Newark Public School System as a substitute teacher when I first came out of college, and I was always given permanent classes because I could have classroom discipline and teach and know how to do a curriculum. The difficulty I have is when you say all this testing, we need this testing to make our children literate. The first line of defense for a child is the teacher. And if a teacher in the classroom can't tell you what the ability of that child is, no test is going to tell you that either. If the teacher in the classroom should know and assess their children in the classroom, and they should know what level each child is on. So all this testing right here don't make no sense to me because the teacher can tell you that. And so until your superintendents that we pay that top dollar to take their physical bodies into their schools that they are in charge of and go to each of their classes and see what tools that their teachers have and resources their teacher have, it's fruitless. And that's all I want to say. So, Charlotte, that's the only question I want.
So what I will indicate to you, and I'll later give you a more formal and thorough answer, is that pursuant to an entity submitting an application for consideration to become a charter, there is a prescribed detailed analysis and also a format of procedure that has to happen. But I will ensure that my office provides the information to you with respect to where it's found, with respect to the regs and the statute, and the process for it to occur.
Okay.
And I do want to just add one point to supplement that, is the process of applying for charter status does not go through us at all. It's an independent act.
But this is my question. Yeah. If they're a public school, their principals are was paid and hired by us. So in order for them to submit an application to a charter, I bet their boss better know they doing it. You the boss, and if the boss don't know, then we got a problem.
So I think there may be a factual misunderstanding. The application is not coming from the school. It is coming from an entity, I believe it's BRIC or by another name.
Okay, so BRIC is being paid out of the budget of the two schools. They're being paid out of the budget of the two schools because they're only a managing agent in there. And what right do they have to submit an application to become a charter school without first making it to the public and then coming to the public and letting the public give, because that's the parents in that area, some input on that. And so it's hard for me, Mr. Cerf, to accept that because BRIC gets paid by the principal of that school. So I'll wait for your information, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cole. Next we have all the new business.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
I just want to touch on something that been talked about tonight. As far as the superintendent report, I hear a lot about testing. But my concern is I always speak for that child who's not being listened to. And I think about the child that's having social issues at home, who have issues at home, who's substance abuse, those type of issues. I never this year heard nobody talk about the social issues surrounding our families and our community. And we're not addressing it. And it hurts me that we're not addressing it because this all come back to making sure that our children are made whole. How can you function in the classroom when you don't know when your next meal coming? How can you function in the classroom when you don't know the next time you might see your mother or your father walk through the door because of the social addiction, the addiction that they have to even drugs or alcohol? Our children, our families are broken in this community, and we spend so much time testing our children, using them as pilots for programs, but we never talk about how we're going to help our community, our children as a whole, and how we're going to help families in this community grow. And the state is partially responsible for this because we had some things in place before. We had social workers, and we had substance abuse coordinators, and we had attendance counselors and other folks. We had a program called Community in Schools. I remember when I was at Louise A. Spencer School, we had Community in Schools. Those people used to come out and they played as mentors, and they took kids under their wings and took them bowling and other places to try to give them that type of stability that they need in their life in order to focus in the classroom. And what I'm afraid of is that we're so concerned about testing our children that we don't worry about the children as a whole and how we're going to help them get their next meal, or how we're going to help them survive this world that we live in, how they're going to survive the streets, especially when we look at our newspaper and we see 12-year-old, 13-year-old children being charged with crime. We're not dealing with that issue, and I think we as adults in this district who are held responsible for every child is accountable for every blood that's shed on our streets.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Jackson.
So, Miss Cole, our community person, unfortunately she left. But I'm actually glad she brought up this information, because I opened up my email and I received a report that there's an application for a charter for Avon Avenue School and Peshon Avenue School. So to echo Ms. Cole's concerns, for one, did this information go out to parents? Was there a meeting between parents and stakeholders of the two schools? Did they vote and or agree to accept the application for the new charter? Are the students who currently attend the schools automatically going to be enrolled to this proposed charter? I know these are questions that aren't necessarily or can be answered by the district, but being that we are the district, their parent body, and us as governors or the governing body and the elected representatives of the community, I think we need to definitely spend a lot of time on this. And I say that because Brick Foundation was not too long before us. In fact, it was just June of this year, if I'm not mistaken, we voted to give them an extension. So we have that. We still didn't, in my personal opinion, didn't get any elaboration or any solid information on their successes on the wraparound programs and the extended day and other services that they serve to these families. We didn't get any solid information on that. So now here it is, less than 6 months later, we see before us, they want to become two charter schools. Well, if they're successful, why would they want to convert into a charter school? For one. Two, who are the proposed leaders of the charter school? I have a lot of questions pertaining to this matter, and I see, in my personal opinion, some hidden agenda, which I'm hoping isn't there. But again, I see some type of hidden agenda behind this conversion from public school to charter application to become a full charter.
I don't know who's hiding, but let me correct the record on something. I have not read the application. I actually have an email out to try to get the application. I will send it to you. I will distribute it to the board so everybody can read the application.
That's already been done.
It has been done.
Yes,
okay.
we have it as a board.
Okay, so I'm sorry the application is made to the state. I am not involved in. My understanding is there are meetings going on with parents and community members. But I have not been invited to one. I'm not part of that. And let me just say this: is that it is my firm hope, and I'm going to do whatever I can to support the continuation of Avon and Peshine as traditional public schools in the district. And so I don't think I can or should say more than that, but that is my expectation and hope.
Right. And just to also let you know, Superintendent, I wasn't laying any blame on your doorstep, but talking to my colleagues, because I'm going to make it very clear. I represent Newark Public Schools. In no way, shape, form, or fashion am I in the business of converting public schools to charter schools. And in fact, you know, I'm going to get off my soapbox here, but you know, I am no way, shape, or form in support of hidden agendas and using students as collateral.
I share your opposition to hidden agendas and using students as collateral. I'm not. We're aligned on that.
And I hope the community understands my standpoint on this, because again, we do understand the business aspect of this maneuver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Any other board members? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move it. Lewis is second on Jackson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.